Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Harder Not Smarter podcast. This is another episode of the On the Docket edition or episode where Greg and I will be talking about 10 or potentially 10 of the world and U.S. current events going on right now.
We're solving the world's problems is what we're doing. We're going to
We
solve
have
the
all
world's
the
problems.
answers. We're just kind enough to partake them on, or give them to you guys, the regular audience. So today's topics. Oh, and we try to keep each answer to or discussion to about 10 minutes. So we keep this will be about 30 minutes, three topics out of the 10. Go into some fun stuff. So today's topics, we have number 1, Thailand legalizes weed. Number 2, as you would expect, Trump elected as 47th president. Number 3, Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. Really keeping my fingers crossed for that one. Number 4, starting a podcast. Is it worth it today? Number 5, North Korea, Ukraine, and high-speed internet porn. I know the audience is going to want to hear about that one. Number 6, Pete Hegseth nominated to be SecDef. 7, Doge 2.0 is in Dogecoin. 8, overcoming mental funks. 9, would you recommend the military to your kids or grandkids? And number 10, Justice League administration choices. This is going to be the Trump cabinet positions and extension thereof. Talk about some of the people he's been nominating. So getting right to it, as I said, we'll be keeping each of these discussion topics to 10 minutes. And so the first one, shaking it up, Pete Hegseth for SecDef. I know this is a contentious topic that people are going to want to be hearing about.
It's probably not contentious among our population, though. Our audience, probably less contentious. I think. I probably hold the minority view on this. I don't know.
I made a post about it, and I was getting some kickback from retired military people. So I think it's more of a demographic. Well, obviously, it's demographic. Everything's demographics. More of generational between the military and then political. Obvious political party, I think, is going to be divided on. I don't know. I feel like you're going to hit a lot of different people from both sides liking or disliking this choice. So the background, Pete Hegseth, most commonly and popularly known for his running of Fox and Friends, the Fox TV or Fox News weekend show. I think it's Friday, Saturday, something like that. But he's also a combat veteran. He was in the National Guard, volunteered for several deployments, both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's a Yale and Harvard graduate. He had a short stint running for, I think, Congress in his home state of Minnesota. He was one of the top runners for the VA secretary back in 2016 with Trump. And now he's currently the nomination Trump is going to be putting forward to Congress to be the new SecDef. It's contentious because he's very young relative to people who typically hold this position. He's late 30s, early 40s. He's right around my age. And he doesn't have the typical pedigree that the candidate pool comes from. Basically, when Trump announced the nomination, everyone's like, whoa, because he wasn't in any of the typical candidate pools that were being presented to him. You know, you're normally getting career politicians, government administrators that have been in the DoD for a while that have a lot of industry knowledge. You have generals and admirals coming in to fill this. You know, people that have risen through the ranks on the military side. While he does have some experience, he got out as a major. I think he just recently left the National Guard and reserves as a whole, so he's free and clear of the military. But he doesn't have that career politician. He doesn't have a career in government service per se, and he doesn't have that senior military experience. So interesting pick. Could be good, could be bad. I was talking with somebody on, I don't know if it was LinkedIn or Instagram or something like that, basically saying we can judge him all we want, but really history is going to be the judge of how well and how successful he's going to be. Because honestly, we're at a big flexion point in the military and society as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. So things I like about it. One, I like that it's a non-traditional candidate. I'm always for that because it gives a fresh perspective to that position, which is good. Um, Combat experience, sure. To me, that is like a data point that could go either way. It's good. Like sure, he understands what like
It's a
the
nice check
average
in the
soldier.
box.
Yeah, like he understands what soldiers are up against and what they go through, and he's got firsthand experience with that. So can't be bad in that respect. Um, is he spun up on geopolitics? Probably. He talks about him a lot. But like my only issue is that like it doesn't really seem from his background, I can't gather that he's like experienced enough for this scope of a role, just because the warfare today is so complex because it's like there's so many different like cyber warfare, for instance, like you have to like be spun up on all of that and how our enemies are using that against us. Both foreign and domestic. So it's like it to me it's like it's too obviously again history will tell, but it's like way too like to like just like outright say like, oh, I love this hire is crazy to me. Like how can you like just outright say that like this guy, yeah, this guy is it. Like this guy is our SecDef and like I have no questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and then I'll just go on like one last point. Like a good about him is that he is focused on the lethality of our forces, and I think that's a good thing overall. Like, do I think that like these DEI issues are as big of a deal as we make them? I think that they get a lot of clout in the news. I don't think that the average soldier really deals with it on a regular day basis. Maybe like through some additional annual trainings that they have to do that they just cruise through anyways and don't really pay attention to. But I think that the average soldier doesn't have to deal with that. And so I don't think
Yeah.
it's that big of an issue.
So I look at it. Yes, he needs to be spun up on a lot of different topics, but he also needs to have the self awareness to know who to bring on to advise him, because you're never going to find anybody that is knowledgeable about land warfare, air warfare, sea warfare, cyber warfare, space warfare, logistics and acquisition, recruitment, retention, all those things. It's just it's mind boggling the amount of stuff that the DoD has to deal with. I think it's 1.3 million people are part of that organization, so the largest department in the U.S. Uh, and so,
So then, sorry, Kevin,
yeah,
to
good.
interrupt you. Then what in his background points to a propensity or a like where in his background is the experience that says like he is the person that will rally people
I think
and
that's that. I
like
think that's it right there. Is that you need to have a person that can see a different vision, because we need to have change. I full heartedly believe that the direction we've been going for probably the last 10 years is the wrong direction, between shifting away from uh, fighting terrorist organizations to peer and near peer competitors uh, in a very different warfare environment. Everything going on in Ukraine right now is basically front row seats to what warfare is going to be. You can't be going into a war with China per se, or for example, with multi-billion-dollar capital ships. Like that can't be your front runner, because you can sink one of those with $100,000 to $1 million missile. So if you're sinking billion-dollar equipment with six-figure, seven-figure, eight-figure weapons, that's a losing battle economically, and wars are won economically and logistically. Yes, the combat needs. We need to be
have you
effective
ever heard
fighting
the
forces.
acronym DIME?
Oh yeah,
Diplomacy, information, military, and economics. Is that what it stands for?
yes.
And that like those are the four facets that you need to that's how you win war, by all four of
Mm-hmm.
those measures.
Yeah, and there's big M and little M for military. There's the using your military to engage with other militaries, like we do with the friendly forces, and we train them up. And then there's the big M, which is actual combat. And so I think you need to have someone that can think outside the box, that is willing to shift away and not follow the traditional path, that can see there needs to be drastic change in how we fund uh, and acquire equipment. We need to be able to move things a lot quicker. You need to get people excited about the military. Retention's way down. Interest in the military is down. Trust in the military is down. And then there's the societal problem of, I think someone said 70% of military fighting age males in the U.S. are not fit for military service, whether it's physical issues, ailment issues, um, mental issues, whatever it is. I've seen the stats as high as 70% of American men are not qualified to join the military.
That's
So that either
wild.
means, yeah. So that either means that you're going to have to lower standards or change the standards to accommodate that, or we need to work with the broader um, government agencies to figure out what we can do. And this goes into another topic of RFK being nominated for HHS to work on the health stuff, but that we can save that topic for another day, because health is going to be a huge thing in order to get more people qualified for service. So I think his role isn't going to be coming up with he's definitely not going to be the tactical stuff. It's probably not going to be the operational stuff. It's going to be the strategic stuff. So figuring out where we're going to be aligning our priorities and our efforts, how we're going to be getting funding for it, and then picking the right people to serve as his advisors, who are the technical and the subject matter experts that can give him the information he needs to be the spokesperson of the DoD.
100%. Yeah. So, Pete, because we know you're listening, my man, like make sure
100%.
you are only as successful as the people that you surround yourself with. I think you're in over your head, bottom line. So make sure that you got some good advisors to your left and right, my friend.
It's
All
going to
right.
be
That's all I
like
got to say.
it's going to be like Yale finals week. Just cram away, man. You got a couple weeks to figure out, or a couple months to figure out how you're going to get confirmed through the Senate and then or Congress, and then also pick your staff. So a lot coming your way. I'm not envious of this job, but I'm excited to see how his performance turns out. I think he could do a good job. I'm gonna trend positive on him being selected.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, that's
Yes. So
history will tell. History will tell.
topic
Next
number
topic.
2,
Next topic.
the trusty mason jar.
Mike.
We can have a fun conversation here. Thailand legalizing weed. Full disclosure, I don't know a ton about this. I saw an article. I thought it was interesting and funny because, first off, they legalized weed federally before we did, and they are pretty sure they're a Muslim country.
Thailand?
Yeah, maybe not completely Muslim, but I'm pretty sure. Can you get me a fact check here?
Let me fact check this.
But I thought it was interesting because we already have a ton of expats, especially military retirees, moving out there because they have their pension, living abroad. The dollar goes a long way. Not Muslim?
Way off. Way off. No.
What do we got?
Buddhist. We should have
Buddhist.
known that. 95.4.
Oh, wow.
92.5% Buddhist, 5.4% Muslim, and 1.2% Christian.
I was way off. I apologize,
Way
everybody.
off.
Wait,
It's all right.
Samson.
It's all right.
Samson. But I think it also just goes to the larger trend of the moving away from the global prohibition of plants, mushrooms, weed, ibogaine, peyote, all these things that literally grow. You can grow it in your backyard. And for about the last 100 years, there has been a global prohibition on these drugs, good or bad. You know, I wasn't around in the early 1900s, late 1800s when some of these choices were made. You know, opium dens probably a big problem. I know that the opium wars going on in China was because we were trying to push that product on China, making them not so great as a society. Um, there's a lot of money in drugs. I mean, but basically, the pharmaceutical company is just a oversized and legal drug cartel anyway. Drugs are drugs are drugs. It's things you consume that change your physiology and state of mind. Uh, we've just decided certain drugs are okay and other drugs are not, and largely it's been drugs that can be profitized by corporations have been legalized, where drugs that cannot be profitized uh, were cast aside. And so I think it's a awesome step in the right direction for countries to start doing this. I'm hoping Trump does a federal uh, what would be the word? Not prohibition. Federal legalization of weed and other things. But Greg, what are your thoughts on this?
It sounds like we're moving in the right direction. I think that this administration, it sounds like this administration, one of the things that they, I think, not necessarily ran on, but like RFK, like he's a big proponent of psychedelics. So I think that if there was an administration that was going to be pro psychedelics and pro legalization of marijuana, I think that this would probably it, which is like kind of odd at the same time because you have a very conservative um, administration at the same time. So like the fact that like we see them like being potentially open to psychedelics is interesting. Um, yeah, that's super interesting to me. But like in terms of marijuana, like I don't smoke marijuana, but do I think it's probably better than like alcohol? Like 100%. I think that weed is way less of a like societal it's way less
Menace.
of a societal drain or menace than alcohol. Alcohol is like literally the worst drug out there in terms of like destroying people, destroying families, destroying communities. Like it is the worst thing out there. And yet like we are totally fine with people consuming alcohol,
Promoting it. Like
promoting it.
we were about
Yeah,
to go
it's
there.
like
I was a Marine. You hear drink like a sailor, drink like a Marine. Marine Corps birthday parties. Like the Marine Corps is still hungover right now from Sunday, which is their birthday, and then Monday was Veterans Day. Marines were getting after it all weekend.
oh yeah. It's weird not to drink. Like
It
it's
is.
in our society. It's like you are sort of a pariah if you don't drink. I think it's becoming less and less of the case. Like I think a lot of, like how there's like always like those studies that would come out and say like red wine's good for you. Like red wine, like a glass a day is good for you. I think a lot of like those studies are now being debunked. And I think society as a whole is becoming more open to the fact that okay, like wow, people should we shouldn't question people if they don't drink, like go figure. um so yeah, I mean I think going back to like legalization of marijuana, I think it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
um
Well, especially
I think there's
because weed was over categorized. So you have hemp and then cannabis. Two different plants, very similar, but one of them has significant number or significant percentage of THC, the other does not. And they've gone back and done the research into like how this categorization happened. And it was basically a doctor back in like the 70s made an arbitrary point of if the plant has more than 0.3% THC, I'll have to verify that, but I think it was somewhere around 0.3% THC, then it's considered cannabis. And if it's below that, then it's considered hemp. But hemp has been basically part of human civilization since human civilization was a thing. It's been used for sails, for ropes, for feed for livestock. Ton of health benefits. It's super strong. It's got a bunch of health properties that are beneficial to us. I work with a company called Ojai Energetics that have a CBD elixir that has startling results in terms of anti-inflammation and other things that used to be very incorporated into our diet because we'd feed hemp to our cattle, we'd feed hemp to the chickens, we'd eat the cattle, we'd eat the chickens, we'd have the eggs. And so we'd be ingesting huge amounts, well, not huge amounts, but significantly more CBD some level of THC in the whole cannabinoid strand that our 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 bodies learned to use a lot of this stuff to our benefit, and then all of a sudden in the early 1900s we just cut it out completely. And so I think there's been a lot of health issues associated with that lack of cannabinoids in our system that now we're going to start getting to revisit again. And also like hemp shirts, hemp materials, hemp textiles. There's stuff out there with hempcrete, so mixing hemp with other materials to create like a super light concrete like material that can be used in 3D
Hemp
printing for
protein,
houses. Hemp
agogi.
protein, yeah, Ogogi. We've sponsored them, or they've sponsored us a bunch. Uh, so I think being able to break away from all this prohibition of plants will be a overall net gain to society. Plus, no one's smoking weed and getting in fights. Like, it's just not happening.
No, no. I think if more people, like more of like our world leaders, were just like sit back and like smoke some weed, maybe everybody would chill the fuck out and stop fighting one another.
We can all hope.
One can dream.
Get Snoop Dogg to mediate.
Oh yeah, I mean he's already at the Olympics, so I
That's
think
right.
that's the next stage is to get him at like a world summit.
Yeah, what's that big Davos? We'll have to get him to Davos.
Yeah, there we go. All right, next topic. Let's get next topic.
That one's beaten.
Yep.
The final topic for today.
Everybody go and smoke some weed.
That's the moral. Yes. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul.
Oh, does it actually say that, or do you just make it up because you want to talk about it?
It's right there. I think maybe Tyson versus Jake Paul.
I can't really see it. I can't. You're like all like brainy right
someone
now.
Someone on YouTube can go through and watch it and verify that it says Tyson and Jake Paul. So,
all right, who do you got?
Mike Tyson,
who do you got?
Dude, I want so badly for Mike Tyson to knock Jake Paul out. Dude, but I will hand it to Jake Paul. I did see an interesting article talking about why this is actually kind of profound. So with the rise of the UFC, well, actually, I'll let you talk first of who you want.
Oh, I mean, so who do I want? I mean, obviously, I want Mike Tyson to like just like KO Jake Paul. I think I bet that Jake Paul behind the scenes is actually like not. I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to even say that. Like, but he's not as bad. He's not as like big of a villain as like he makes himself out to be. Like, he's definitely a showman. So maybe he would be all right to hang out with. And I think that he's very dedicated to boxing. Like, he is clearly dedicated to his craft. Like, he's a decent boxer, I think. For me, I think the only thing I think that Jake Paul is probably going to win. But if he doesn't, he's just going to get KO'd. Like, first.
You think he's going to win by decision? Like, he's going to go the distance, and he's going to win by outlast Tyson.
Yeah, I think if he wins, it's going to go the distance. He's not going to knock out Tyson. There's no way, unless he has like a liver shot or something like that, or like something to his body that just like doesn't sit right with old Iron Mike.
So the article that I saw was talking about how Jake Paul has basically single-handedly brought boxing back into the spotlight. Like, even McGregor with his fight with Mayweather, it was a UFC fight that just happened to be boxing. Like, everyone was watching McGregor because they wanted to see what would happen if a UFC fighter fought a boxer. But it wasn't like it wasn't bringing boxing back into the forefront, where this is a complete paradigm shift, because this is going to be broadcast on Netflix, which is like, Netflix is good on them to figuring out that they can shift their value to their customers. But he's bringing.
Wait a second. Before we go any further, is it free on Netflix?
I don't know yet.
Interesting. Okay.
There might be like an additional charge. I'll have to look. But he, like, what is Jake Paul? Late 20s, maybe 30s, or early 30s.
Maybe early 30s. I don't know. I'll look it up.
But he's young, so he's bringing boxing back to the form. Because after the UFC started picking up steam, that became the real fight showmanship sport, because it it was much more dynamic. It was honestly, it probably catered more towards the shortened attention span too of people. You know, you're getting three to 5 minute rounds versus, you know, what is it? It used to be 15 rounds. I think that they've lowered it to 12 or 13 rounds now is a full bout. Um, each of them 3 minutes. And so it's very long, and it doesn't have that typical excitement part peak. You know, you get some clenching, but if a guy gets knocked to the ground, they have 10 seconds to recover. Where UFC, guy gets knocked to the ground and it's just like full mayhem going in, and it seems much more raw and natural. And then there's all the fight fixing and all that other negativity. Like Tyson was a part of that stuff because Rodney King was taking advantage of him, taking a lot of the money. They were doing a bunch of shady stuff, and so I think boxing as a national sport fell much to the wayside where UFC was the breadwinner. But I think this is going to bring some of that back. I did hear Joe Rogan talk about this topic a little bit about, you know, the why boxing is actually so much more dangerous than UFC. Why UFC's never had a person die from it, where boxing's had, I don't know how many, but a lot of people have died in boxing, and that's because of the repeated concussive nature of it. You know, you get knocked down, you have 10 seconds to kind of recover, get your wits about you, and go back at it. So these are like repeated concussions going in,
Oh,
and
I would
it's
like, if I think of like a sport that I'd want my kid to play, like if I had to like choose between boxing and MMA, like easy,
yeah.
I'd want them to do MMA. Like
Well, with
the
boxing,
amount of
you really only have headshots. You have headshots and body shots. There is nothing else. You can't kick them. You can't like we. How many UFC fights have ended because a a trained kickboxer just wrecks another opponent's legs, and he can't
Mhm.
stand anymore. He taps out from it, or they break a leg or something like that. Where
Or
boxing,
submission,
yeah, or you
like
get a
submission, like
submission or something like
yeah.
that. Where boxing, you need to knock them out, and short of getting like a kidney punch in there, you're not really getting a knockout from body shots. You might break ribs occasionally, but it's much more inclined for the person to be going for headshots than MMA, where there's so many different options. And then the weigh-in process, you know, dehydrating yourself, which being dehydrated increases your chances of concussions and other brain-related injuries. UFC has some of that, but I think they've been able to mitigate it a little bit. But boxing was real bad. They used to have day of fights too, where, you know, you're going into the ring dehydrated. You don't even have that 24-hour period to rehydrate. So I think they're gonna have to make some changes to bring it up. But it is interesting to see Jake Paul, the amount of training he's put into it to actually become a contender against Tyson.
Yeah.
But I think my prediction is Tyson's going to win. Maybe not a knockout, but here's why. You watch the UFC or other fights, and you get a very new fighter, lots of energy, lots of strength, um, and, you know, raw talent coming in. But there's something to be said about being in the ring that many times and knowing what it's like, being able to keep yourself calm, not overexpending your energy, and just having the actual ring strategy versus just the raw strength and power to be able to knock somebody out. You get some of those guys in the UFC who are late 30s, early 40s with, you know, 20, 30, 40 fights going against that 23-year-old that has 5 fights, 10 fights. A lot of time the older guy wins because they've just been there so many times. Uh, it's it does become a chess game at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, like Tommy Fury is like his only real like professional boxing match, like where he fought a professional boxer
Mm-hmm.
and he lost. And then now you have Mike Tyson, who of course obviously is 58 years old. So I mean, you're talking about a 30-year age gap, and you know, Mike Tyson's best days are definitely behind him. But yeah, there is something to be said about just like knowing the sport of boxing and like having that experience, just like any sport or anything in life, like you just have that experience that you can lean on. That when things get tough in like, round, 8, 9, 10, I don't know how many rounds this fight is, but you can rest on that experience where, Jake Paul has never been really taken the distance like that. So, but to your point about Jake Paul, like I think I watched actually an episode of the documentary on Netflix, and he'll say, and he says in that, and other people like will kind of vouch for this, like his biggest achievement in boxing is his ability to promote. And like the people that are fighting under the undercard, the two females, like he promoted their fight, and I forget their names, but they're like, really well named female fighters, but it's sort of like giving them a platform or an increased platform to fight under. So he would say, I think like that is his biggest achievement, which I think is cool, that he's like his role as a promoter. Obviously he likes to box, but at 27 years old, obviously super impressive what he's been able to do for an entire sport. It's like actually like it's kind of fucking crazy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you got to commend the guy for being a promoter who's also going to get into the ring. Like, not to necessarily call him blanking on the guy's name. The guy that was just Rodney
King.
There we go. He would promote the fights and just collect the paycheck. Where Jake Paul is, hey, I'm going to get in the ring with Tyson now. I'm gonna, even if nothing else, it's going to be a hell of a fight that's going to attract a lot of attention. And even if he gets knocked out, he'll probably still do it again.
100%. And dude, you know what? Like the balls on that kid too. Also, like he's calling out. He's calling out Canelo Alvarez. Like if he fights Canelo, like Canelo's gonna just like take his lunch. There's a big weight difference there, but I mean Canelo's he's gonna knock him the fuck out. And then he's also called out guys like Conor McGregor. Like he's not afraid to get in the ring with anybody, which I think is also like kind of a testament to him. He's got balls, that kid.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. It's Friday night. It's tomorrow night. Which,
nice.
If we're airing this tomorrow, then it might be tonight if you're listening to this.
Yeah, we're going to air this first thing tomorrow.
Sweet. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been another fun episode. Sorry if we didn't get to the topics that you were wanting to hear about. If you want to look any of them up, we can put some links to articles in the show notes. Definitely go look up the North Korean high-speed porn thing. That's just hilarious. We'll make sure there's a link in there to that article so it makes sense.
I will. I'm going to make sure that's definitely going to be one of them for sure.
All right, everybody. Thank you. And we appreciate your viewership.